Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and as predicted, and as we all knew really, we are in for a blockbuster end to this summer transfer window. We have a bumper update for you in regards to what's going to happen before Friday, what Celtic are looking for before Friday, and an update on our next recruit. We also have to look forward to that Champions League draw tomorrow, which has gone slightly under the radar with all the chaos amongst it. So, aye, strap yourselves in. We've got a lot to talk about today, but let's start with a good old-fashioned Celtic transfer talk. Very quickly, if you didn't catch my video / live stream last night, thank you all very much for 40,000 subscribers. We have hit the landmark. We've passed another milestone. It's something that I couldn't imagine doing, and I couldn't do it without you guys. We're already on to 40,100. You're going mental. Let's keep it up. Let's keep going right up until the end of this transfer. Well, let's just keep going all together, but right up until that transfer window shuts on Friday night. We've got so much content. We've got a live stream tomorrow for the Champions League draw. We've got a live stream on Friday for the closing of the transfer window. We've got our derby preview, derby review. We've got a hell of a lot of content for you. So please, if you haven't already, hit like and subscribe. It would be much appreciated, and I couldn't thank you enough. Right then, Celtic have identified their centre-half option that they want to bring in before the end of the transfer window to fill the gap for the next 8 weeks, while Cameron Carter-Vickers and Mike Nawrowski recover from their respective injuries. At about 3 o'clock this afternoon, or 2 o'clock this afternoon I should say, The Times published this article. Nat Phillips, Celtic want Liverpool defender on loan. Brendan Rodgers bids to address defensive injury crisis before the season's first derby. And then in the actual article itself, it goes on to say Celtic are closing in on a move for the Liverpool centre-half. Nat Phillips, the 26-year-old, is being considered for a season-long loan as Brendan Rodgers attempts to strengthen his defensive options because of recent injuries. Phillips is 6'3" and has been described as a monster in the air by manager Jurgen Klopp. So we've been waiting patiently to see what we would do to address the centre-half crisis that we have right now. Cameron Carter-Vickers out for 2 months, Mike Nawrowski out for 2 months. It's left us with only Gustav Lagerbielke and Liam Scales. It's not enough. We've seen that against St Johnstone. We need improvement, we need reinforcement, and this is where we're going. This is the route we're going down. And what I will say is, it could be a hell of a lot worse than this, and I'm actually quite happy with it. Let's talk about Nat Phillips for a couple of minutes or so. This is a player that as soon as I seen the name come out this afternoon, I knew a lot of Celtic fans would be unhappy with, and you could say turning their nose up at. The way that you've got to look at this is a stopgap for 8 weeks. And Celtic aren't going to go out and break the bank or find some top tier talent to come in and be a replacement for the other two centre-halves for the next 8 weeks. I actually think that this is pretty much the perfect player to go for. And it's a hell of a lot better than the conversations that we've had about the likes of Johnny Evans and Phil Jones. Nat Phillips is someone who has not struggled with injury problems his whole career, or in recent years anyway. He's not someone who is at the retirement end of their cycle. This is someone who's desperate for first team football and has showed quality when given the chances of first team football at the highest level for Liverpool. Don't get me wrong, we're not talking about a Virgil van Dijk. We're not talking about someone who's coming in here to revolutionise the Celtic defence. We're not talking about a world beater. We're talking about Nat Phillips, right? He's not the greatest thing from sliced bread. But when you go off what Liverpool fans are saying, and if you go off what we've seen of him when he was needed at Liverpool, I tell you right now, it could be a hell of a lot worse. Here's some of his statistics in recent years since he was relied on at Liverpool. So since the 2020-21 campaign, 17 appearances in that Premier League season when he had to come in and fill in their injury crisis. He's also played in the Champions League as well. He's played big games in that competition, which is obviously useful because he'll need to play the first 2 match days with Celtic. But he has come in a number of times for Liverpool when needed, including 2 appearances last season in the Premier League. You're talking about a backup defender from the Prem. Once again, not someone who's going to come in and revolutionise your defence. But when you look at the situation that Cameron Carter-Vickers was in when we signed him back in 2021, there's a lot of similarities. Someone who was loaned out to Bournemouth, funnily enough, someone who was struggling to get into their top 6 Premier League team, and someone who just needed that chance elsewhere to really kickstart their career. And who knows how it will go at the end of this 8 weeks before Vickers and Navrowski are back. Nat Phillips might do enough to stake a claim to keep that spot, to really show that he can do something. He might not be good enough. It could go one of either way, but what I am saying is I think this is the perfect move for Celtic. It's a risk-free 1-year loan deal where we don't need to commit to anything, and we're not going to have to pay money to try and fill a hole for 2 months. I think this works out pretty well. The only problem that I have with him is the fact that he hasn't played a hell of a lot of senior football in his career, and he's 26 years of age. You know, we're not talking about a 19, 20, 21-year-old. We're talking about someone who is entering their prime years, and he's played less than 100 senior games. That isn't great, but when you look at the situation he's been at Liverpool for a long, long time. It's hardly like he was going to break into that side over the last 5-6 years with Virgil van Dijk there, with Joel Matip there, guys like Joe Gomez as well on the fringes, and Konate. It's solid to get in there. He has been just a reliable enough backup option. But I'm all for this. I'm pretty happy with it, and I'll take it. It's even got the David Buick seal of approval. Big Liverpool man is our Dave, and he gave me this great review of the man himself. So, do you know what? If he's good enough for Buick, former TSF man, he's good enough for me. And we'll watch what happens with the developments on this if Liverpool are willing to let him move on loan. But yeah, as I said, I'd much rather him than Liam Scales playing at Ibrox on Sunday, and I'd much rather him filling in the gap for the next 8 weeks as well. So yeah, I would be happy with us getting this done to try and solve that crisis at the moment. And on that note, just a quick summary of what to expect in the last few days of the transfer window. This is the names to keep in mind right now, thanks to Everything Celtic for the great threads over the past few weeks and months in the transfer window. These are the 3 names we should now be expecting, I would say. Luis Palma, Paulo Bernardo and Nat Phillips. Those are the 3 that I think Celtic will secure heading into Friday. And taking them away, I hope that we get another 2 now. I'm hoping that we get that left back that we've been talking about, and hopefully get a goalkeeper. I'm not as optimistic on that front, but if we get a left back on top of those 3 players, I would say it's a bit of an optimistic end to the window. I don't think the transfer windows went the way that we wanted it to exactly, but we'll watch what happens over the next few days. But those are the 3 names to look out for. If you want more on Paulo Bernardo, there will be on the channel if he signs, but you can also check out the live stream from last night. So then, amongst all the madness of the transfer window, of the dodgy results over the last couple of weeks, and everything else that's happening at Celtic Football Club, do you remember that we've got a Champions League draw tomorrow? Yes, I know, I almost forgot as well, but we do. The Champions League group stage draw is tomorrow. We will find out who we are taking on over the next few months in Europe's most prestigious club competition. I can't be arsed, to be honest, lads. I think we should pull out the draw. No, listen, I'm one of the most optimistic Celtic fans you'll meet. I'm always full of even false optimism. I don't like being pessimistic, and I like to fancy our chances. But this season, wow, judging off the first few weeks, it could be a nasty campaign for us in the Champions League. But we've got to take it with pride. We've got to go and fight. We've got to do our best. We've got to give a good account of ourselves. And ultimately, Brendan Rodgers has came back to try and improve us in this competition and in European football in general. Now, whether that happens straight away this year, we will wait and see. But wow, group stage draw tomorrow. Quick reminder, this is actually the last season of the Champions League in its current format. That's it. This will be the last time that we get the traditional group stages consisting of 6 games against 3 opponents. Next year, we will be switching to the Swiss format, which personally, I'm really excited for. I think it'll be better. But we need to wait and see what it's like in the flesh and obviously how it works there and then. But this is the last time we'll get this sort of format, so let's hope we go out with a bang. And on that note, let's have a look at some of the sides we'll be coming up against in the Champions League this season. So here are all the teams currently qualified for the Champions League group stages 23-24. Of course, we await the last set of qualifiers to be played tonight, which we'll see, you know, PSV or Rangers, Antwerp, Der Athens, yada yada. So it's not fully completed yet. But what we do have is most teams qualified and confirmed for the group stages. So there you go. There's your pot one, which has the likes of Champions League holders Manchester City, Serie A winners Barcelona, sorry, not Serie A winners, La Liga winners Barcelona, Serie A winners Napoli, Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich. Pot 2 having the likes of Real Madrid, Manchester United, Leipzig, who we took on last year, and Arsenal. Pot 3, Shakhtar, who we faced last season. Obviously, Italian giants, Milan, Lazio, who we took on in the Europa League a few years ago. And then the pot 4 sides, which doesn't really matter to us because we can't face any of them, but we're in there amongst Real Sociedad, Galatasaray, Newcastle, Union Berlin, and Lens as it currently stands. So it's a stacked Champions League this season. In all honesty, you look at the majority of teams that we can face, and you probably don't really fancy your chances against many. And listen, we've got to keep ourselves realistic. As optimistic as I am, there's a lot of teams in there which I don't want to face, and that's the vast majority of them. But we're going to have a bit of fun. I'm going to talk about what I think would be our best and worst case scenario, as I do every year, and then we're going to do a draw simulator and see what we're given. But on that note, let's start with the worst case scenario that I think Celtic could be faced with. This is what I believe to be the worst case group. Of course, this is all subject to my own opinion. You might think there's worse combinations or better combinations, but for me, this is the worst case scenario. Manchester City, Real Madrid, and Milan. Man City, they are the best team in world football, and the way that we have started our season, I fear that we would leave Celtic Park with any dignity left intact. Erling Haaland is someone who I desperately want to avoid. Now, I know some people still, for some reason, love glamour ties and love the chance to see these once-in-a-generation players. I couldn't care less. I don't want to see Haaland play against Celtic. Not now, not ever, because I think he'd score about 6. I would want to avoid City at any cost. The football they play is unbelievable. And yeah, Brendan Rodgers versus Pep Guardiola. He has a good record against him, especially Celtic boss. He managed to draw against him twice back in 2016-17. Things have changed massively. That was Guardiola's first season. And when you look at the difference in the football and the difference in the squad, it would not be the same. I tell you that right now. Real Madrid, of course, we faced last year. I think they're still the strongest side in pot 2. They're looking to get some revenge this season for missing out on the major honours last year. And I don't want Celtic to be a victim of said revenge, quite frankly. Finally, in pot 3, Milan, I think that are probably the strongest side in there. Still, of course, blessed with some really good players, some extraordinary talent. And yeah, for as good as a trip to the San Siro would be, I just think that when you look at all the pot 3 sides, they're probably the one that I would like to avoid the most at this moment in time. So right there, I think that would be Celtic's worst case scenario tomorrow. And if you put your money on it, that's probably going to be the draw that we get now that I've said it. So best case scenario, and let me be clear, I don't think there's many best case scenarios. I think that most teams in this competition are probably going to end up laying down Celtic numerous times. But this is what I think the best case would be: Feyenoord, Porto, and Lens. I think that would be one that I would be very, very happy with, to tell you the truth. Even though I still wouldn't expect us to do very much in that group. Feyenoord, fantastic last season, brilliant, and obviously share a great relationship with Celtic. For that reason, I guess you could add the bonus of being a great atmosphere and such, but I think that they're probably just the weakest out of the 8 sides. Still strong, arguably stronger than Celtic, but just out of those 8 sides in pot 1, if you're being realistic, they are probably the one that you'd want to face the most. In pot 2, I've went similar with that thinking and picked Porto, because you just look at the likes of Real Madrid and Manchester United, Dortmund example. Dortmund could have won the Bundesliga last year, were incredibly unlucky not to. Real Madrid, of course. Manchester United, who, yeah, they aren't great at the minute, but still a very good side. Porto, they're not quite up there. Still, though, a side I fully expect to see Celtic lose to. But once again, I just think out the 8 sides are probably the one that I'd fancy the most. And then finally, Lens, who out of every team we can face in the competition, I think right now would probably be the most beatable. Once again, would never go in just expecting Celtic to win that game, but on paper, they would be the most beatable. They have came off the back of a great season, yeah, but they've started the season horrifically. They have not won in their opening 3 games. I think they've drawn 1, lost 2. They lost their 2 best players in the pre-season, of course, with Seko Fofana moving to Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia and Louis Openda moving to Red Bull Leipzig, or Rasenballsport Leipzig, sorry, as well. 2 big players, their 2 best players now gone. And yeah, they've not started the season very well. So I think that right now they would probably be the most beatable. And I think that's the best group that we could probably draw as it currently stands. But once again, still not easy. After all, it is the Champions League. So on that note, I said we'd have a bit of fun and I would do a random Champions League draw to see what the computer gives me. Now this is the website Swiss Football Data, which is absolutely fantastic for keeping up with the likes of the UEFA coefficients, the Champions League group shapings, all that kind of stuff. They keep right on top of it, so it's the best thing to use. And also with this draw, it allows me to pick who I think will win those fixtures tonight, which will shape up the rest of the groups. So obviously we're going to be going as Celtic for this, and out of these games here, I'm just going to pick the sides who are currently leading the tie. So Antwerp are currently beating Athens 1-0, Copenhagen are currently beating Rakov 1-0, and then obviously Rangers and PSV are at 2-2 just now, but I'm going to go for PSV because why would I pick Rangers, right? We're going to go for PSV, and of course we are a Celtic fan, so you can also pick as well like easiest draw, hardest draw. We'll have a look at what the computer thinks would be our easiest and hardest draw, but in terms of our random draw, let's see what I get then. Okay, do you know what? It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It would predict Celtic to finish third in this group against Arsenal, Napoli and Red Star Belgrade. I wouldn't be horrified at this, to be quite honest. Napoli, I think, would turn this over. I've said this numerous times in the past. I think against English teams, a bit of their complacency and underestimating us always comes into it, and we seem to do pretty well against them, so I wouldn't mind the likes of Arsenal. Plus, I don't think they've looked all that great this season so far. And Red Star Belgrade is someone who would be a tough away tie, but someone you'd certainly be expecting to at least compete with at home and maybe win. So that wouldn't be the worst. That wouldn't be the worst draw. Do you know what? If that was what we were handed tomorrow, I probably wouldn't cry at it. I think there could be a really good battle on for trying to at least get third place in that group. And just to give you a quick look at what the computer thinks would be our hardest and easiest groups, the computer actually agrees with me. I didn't even know this. The computer agrees with me in terms of hardest group. Manchester City, Real Madrid and Milan. That's who they think would be the toughest group for Celtic. So basically the same reasons as I've already said. And in terms of easiest draw for Celtic in regards to that, they agree with one of my picks. They've put Feyenoord as the pot 1 side, but Leipzig and Shakhtar Donetsk. Of course, we faced both those sides last season, so it would be a trip again to Leipzig to face them, and then a trip to Hamburg to take on Shakhtar Donetsk, because that's where they're playing this season. However, funnily enough, the computer still predicts us last in that group, even though it had us third in the random draw, which is weird. But there you go, that's what the computer thinks the easiest draw is. Let me know, what is your best case and worst case scenarios in the comments below. Right, that's me. I've dragged it on longer than I wanted to. We'll be back all week. Cheerio.